What's up, guys? Mike with DFW Auto Recon Pro again. We have a 2023 Chrysler Pacifica that's been outfitted with the Bronability wheelchair ramp accessories. We've done quite a few of these for a wholesale account that sells these vehicles to these customers. This customer in particular had an insurance claim, and the insurance suggested taking the vehicle to one of their preferred repair facilities, which he did, and the body shop actually rejected the repair. The body shop basically didn't really want to mess with anything that's aftermarket. They told the customer that there was nothing they could do for him. So customer called my wholesale account and they referred him to me. So body shop actually brought the vehicle here to our shop, which I was pretty honored. That doesn't happen very often. Anyway, we inspected the vehicle. We've done a bunch of these repairs. We've learned a lot about these wheelchair vans along the way. This one had an insurance claim associated with it, so we were able to work with the insurance company and help them understand our process and what we have to go through to get these vehicles back to pre-crash condition. Adjuster was pretty friendly and pretty helpful, so we didn't have to fight too hard to get what we needed to fix this car. But one thing I wanted to do in this video was reach out to the pros or the technicians for two different reasons. One was to hopefully exchange ideas on how to cross some of the hurdles that we've discovered when we're repairing these vans. That if you guys know anything, feel free to let me know on some of the issues that I'll be talking about in this video. And maybe there might be some information that I can give you folks that might be helpful if you come across the same hurdles that I do. So we're just about done with this repair. We're back in sort of the reassembly stage. We're say maybe 90% done with this. We're trying to get it ready to ship tomorrow. But before I put everything back together, I just wanted to sort of document some of the issues that we have had to deal with along the way, and maybe point out some of the things that might help you out when dealing with these repairs. So let's get into it. Well, here she is, Chrysler Pacifica 2023, as I mentioned, outfitted with the Bronability wheelchair ramp accessories. These panels down below here are the panels that we are typically replacing and repairing and repainting and reinstalling. They get banged up a lot. They get curb checked. Speed bumps, whatever. You can see the ground clearance is pretty thin on this, so it doesn't take much to bottom these out and destroy them. So we've done quite a few. The one thing that kind of complicates these repairs is the subframe that gives the recessed wheelchair ramp all the support that it needs. When they install that subfloor in this, it creates a huge gap on the vehicle, and that's ultimately what these skirts are designed for. Not only giving them a nice safe spot to step down out of, but it's, cosmetically speaking, just designed to close the gap. We have redone a bunch of these, and you'll notice they're not the prettiest things in the world because they're just screwed in to that subframe that's designed for the wheelchair ramp. So a lot of times they may actually hit the bottom down here or underneath the subfloor, and that's when things get a little bit more complicated. This is the good side, so we'll make our way over to the side that we repaired and kind of show you what we had to go through and what problems we developed. First problem that we had were getting the correct gaps along the edge of the door, and we've tried just about everything to figure out how to get these doors adjusted. It's a typical problem with almost every one of these wheelchair vans. We're not sure if it's a design flaw of the actual frame that holds this in place, but almost every one of my customers, when they bring these cars in to have these repaired, this gap right here becomes an issue for us. And we've been toying with different ways to remedy this problem, but we haven't quite perfected it yet. So that's why I'm reaching out to you folks today. Any of the pros or any of the technicians that are out there that can offer some insight would be greatly appreciated. And maybe hopefully I've got some info that'll work for you guys as well. So let's move over to the other side and I'll show you what we got. So the manufacturer actually has sort of their own system for installation on this. They're using factory holes from the OEM door to mount this bracket into. We used all of their available settings, I guess you'd say, but what we had to do was sort of reinforce this door, because when we installed this, we started to see a gap that's developing at the top of the frame to the bottom of the door. So when you get this installed, you'll notice that there are spacers that go up here and here, and spacers that go up in here and here. You can't really tell, but it's sort of a horseshoe, so it slides down up over the top of this. There are no spacers down here, but what that does is it forces this panel to kind of make the bottom panel close the gap a little bit more. But during our installation, it was making things really cumbersome to get a good seal around this. Now, they did put some seam sealer on this afterwards, which we're going to do to try to prevent any penetration or road noise. But it just seemed like a design flaw to me to not be able to build this with a little bit more tenacity to allow this gap to close. This door was moving freely and forcing the door into a position when it was closed to develop gaps along the outside edge. So we had to toy around with this a lot, and outside of using their own settings, we actually reinforced it by using some pretty thick sheet metal screws to just kind of close this gap up a little bit more. Probably didn't need to do that if I was a professional Braun Ability, but I am sort of a creative engineer, and I like to, build things better than what they were, because when I notice problems, I'll try to fix them so we don't have to deal with them. The one thing the customer was pretty concerned about was the gap that was being created over here and down here. It just, he got a lot of road noise and it was driving him crazy. So this is the new panel that's installed. It's a pretty expensive piece of steel. It's not very strong. It's actually kind of a beer can. It's very flexible. I think once we get the seam sealer up all around the edges, it'll probably get a little bit stronger. But this is the back side of the door that accepts those cosmetic skirts. The one thing I will mention is the factory studs that they have welded in on the back side of this plate, which I'll show you in a minute, are extremely fragile. They, if you're making adjustments up and down on your hinge to try to close your gaps around the door, those threads will get hot and actually break off, which one of them did. So I put a 10 millimeter through here with a lock nut, and to be honest with you, it's stronger than it was with these two factory ones. So I don't know if you can see it, but I'll get you a better shot outside, kind of show you what I'm dealing with. But number one problem that I'm having is this hinge down here. Just seems like it's a design flaw. So we'll go to the other side here and kind of show you what that side looks like. As I mentioned, I have the harness unplugged, so that way I can manually move the door around without having to fight the automatic setting on this. So, as I mentioned, we are almost done with this repair. I've got the new subframe, or the new the skirt frame, whatever you want to call it. It's installed. This is the outside of it, obviously. This is the area that was severely damaged, that we did a bunch of body work on, and we had to straighten out this channel here because it was bent up pretty good as well, to allow the lower roller to make a nice connection in here so that we didn't have any issues. When the car was brought in, the damage that was down here was forcing the door to stay relatively wide open. It had a pretty hefty gap right here. Not to mention, none of our other gaps were lined up either. But after we did the body work on the sub portion of the flooring, luckily nothing was damaged over here. We replaced this. The problem that we came up with was the gap here again, and getting our body lines to line up. Believe it or not, I spent 2 days, probably a total of 6 hours each day, moving this door back and forth, adjusting it up and down, going top hinge, lower hinge, back hinge. My question is, and I'm talking to my wholesaler about this, is if this is a factory hinge. I don't feel like it is, because the top of the hinge goes up higher to accept this frame. I think if this, I didn't really look, but this is the OEM door, and if we deleted this frame, would this actually connect to this? Well, I looked up to see if there's any part numbers on this. I did a Google search on the OEM one, and they look different. This looks like something that's coming from Brawnability. But again, I have my my wheelchair van company looking into that for me, and they're also sending me some tech tips on learning how to align the door correctly. So hopefully by the time we're done with this here, I'll have a good seal on this door, because after everything I did, I kept getting a gap significantly larger than what you're seeing here. My gap is pretty close, but compared to the other side, it's just not, it's not as tight. And you can see my body lines are just a fraction of an inch off. My belts are a little off. These seem pretty level. This gap looks pretty good. This gap is sort of thin, and when I zoom out here, you'll notice the top in comparison to the bottom is starting to taper outwards. So my gap here isn't good, at least not one that I'm happy with. However, after 2 days of toying with it, I'm pretty happy where it's at. Once I get everything buttoned up, get it on the road, take it for a shakedown, and see if all that road noise it has been eliminated, I'll probably feel a lot better about this. One thing, this weather stripping, I'm not sure if that's factory or not. It might be, but these are installed sort of, well, not sort of, completely custom. Most of these were riveted in, at least along these bottom edges. Originally, they just riveted it to the edge of the door, which I thought was pretty stupid. So I threaded some 10 millimeters in here. I think there's 3 of them. The problem that I was having was when this door is closing, is that I feel like this bracket is forcing the door outwards. It's not allowing me to make a good connection and close this gap. And that's been the frustration in this whole thing. So if anybody has any ideas, I'd really appreciate it, because as far as I'm concerned, this thing right here is forcing the door outward. It just does not want to line up correctly. I don't know if it's a design flaw or if it's just one of those things where, you know, the adjustments need to be made at the hinges. One thing that we were experimenting with was, you know, leveling the door, moving the door up and down on the hinge, adjusting the hinge up and down, trying to make some adjustments up here, which there is not much free play to do that with. We were making adjustments with the strikers, or the door latches here, to try to get an even fit and close all of our gaps. Also, this has been kind of a mystery as well. On the back upper hinge, if you loosen these 10 mils, you can make an adjustment, which seems, unless this is psychosomatic, seems to be making a tilting motion, because the more you back this spring-loaded bolt out, or the more you bottom it out, it prevents it from actually latching. So this is as close as I can get it. Again, 2 days, and my gap went from out here to about right where it should be. The only thing that's left is this gap right here, and that has been, I've got a little OCD, it has been extremely frustrating. So I don't know quite what else to do to close this gap. So again, I've got my wholesale account working on gathering some information on how to fix that. And if y'all have any ideas, I'd greatly appreciate it. But for now, we're gonna reattach the panels, put them back on, do the seam sealer, and get this car ready for delivery. So let's get into it. Success on the first one. As I mentioned before, these aren't the most cosmetically appealing panels I've ever dealt with, but it's on, door closes, it's not falling off. So on to number 2. Well, as you can tell by the lack of organization and chaotic mess that I've got left over here, which is a little unorthodox for me, let me just tell you, this was a headache. Once I got this panel on, I was having problems with this gap here. It wanted to stick out really far. They had an additional bracket that attached from here to the interior of the door that was supposed to probably give it a nice angle so that it closed in, but it's an ugly bracket and it wasn't working for me. It was really bent up. So what I did was I took this off again, and I went in here and I adjusted some of the screws, made some modest bending, because again, this frame is tin foil. It's pretty malleable. So I was able to bend it, maneuver it around, loosen up some bolts, loosen up some screws, try to get it positioned back and forth all day long. It took to get that gap closed. I still have this gap that I'm messing with. And now when the skirts are on, you can see this gap. So I'm hoping that I'm going to make some adjustments down here on this lower roller. I know that there's some play in these. You have to take this out because there's not much play in it. Well, there's a little. Usually you could just loosen it, leave it in there. Loosen these. You don't have to completely remove the nuts, and then just get up underneath it. Sometimes I'll put a jack underneath this to support it so it doesn't put too much pressure on this. And just keep moving up and down, back and forth, and try to see what we can do. I know there's probably an easier way to line these doors up, but again, I'm definitely no professional at this. I've seen some videos where they were talking about some adjustments being made here, but honestly, that bolt only looks like it just holds on this. Those bolts, anyway, look like they just hold this latch mechanism here. There's nothing special to them, but I don't know. Kind of tempted to see what we can do here to try to heighten this door up and get it sucked in and continue this battle. But all in all, it's looking pretty dang good. I'm pretty proud of closing this gap the way that I did. This was not easy at all. The rivets that they use on the other side, they just weren't strong enough to really hold this together, so I found some plastic rivets, and of course the rest are screws. I don't think they're really that pretty, to be honest with you, but whatever. It's on there, and it's way more secure than those cheesy little rivets that were in there before. So we're going to keep adjusting this to see if we can close this gap, try to line up our body lines, but for the most part, we're almost done. And yeah, nightmare. Well, I suppose I should tap out. This is as good as it gets, and the only thing I could think that's causing this issue is maybe a slightly bent hinge somewhere. One of maybe the lower roller, I'm not sure, but I was able to get that gap closed a little bit better. But you can see my line is off pretty significant, but I mean, it's a massive improvement from what it looked like originally. And I don't know, this is the part where, if anybody has any insight, I kind of feel like it's this giant bracket that's underneath here, that there's probably multiple adjustments that can be made, or maybe you have to wobble out a hole, drill it out a little bit further, just so that you have some play to move back and forth, up and down, to try to see what you can do. But unless maybe there's something going on with the subframe that's forcing this door out a little bit, I just can't really diagnose it. But I hate to be that guy, but sometimes you got to know when to say when. The cost-benefit analysis, the amount of time that I've put into this, I'm just going to chalk it up to education. Again, we've done a bunch of these in the past, but for the most part, the plastic is just destroyed. We don't really deal much with the structural side of it, so that could be an issue. And without having some sort of tech sheet or specification sheet, there's really no way to refer to this. So again, if you guys have any ideas on what you think I might be doing wrong, you'll notice here that is 0 to 0 on the good side, and this line is perfect all the way up to the top. It's a little thicker down here than it is up here, but I think that's pretty common. But you can tell the side that wasn't hit is just super clean. Minor gap right there, which again, I struggled with that half of the day today, and I've definitely duplicated that gap, so we're good there. But again, I'm just a fraction of an inch off here somewhere. Adjustments from the back, from the top, from the bottom, and this is as good as it gets. So ship it, put the trim on tomorrow, and call it a day. Well, good morning. We are getting ready to get rid of this. Just put all the interior trim back on her. I was kind of hoping these gaps would cure overnight with the nice weather. Obviously that's a joke, but it's done. And as I was saying yesterday, sometimes you have to know when to say when, and I hate to do a repair that comes with an excuse or some sort of, lack of 100%. I mean, we are probably 98%. Definitely a huge improvement from last time. So what did we learn on this? I think number one, if there's going to be any structural damage down here on that subfloor, let's just go ahead and replace all the hinges. Still waiting on my dealer to tell me if the lower roller on this side is actually an aftermarket part, or if that's something that comes from Chrysler. The other thing I would suggest is, before you lay the that lower bracket in, the bracket that holds this piece in, word of advice, I didn't realize this until the last minute. The lower trim panel that's down here, the bracket doesn't have any holes preset for it. So before you put your bracket on, make sure you line up your trim panels and pre-drill out all of your holes, which I did on some of them that were meant for hanging the thing. But anyway, you have the trim panel and also the skirt too. You have to pre-drill out the frame. Just mock everything up before you paint it, before you install it. Make sure you've got all your screw holes pre-drilled out. And yeah, I would reinforce this back end, because the manufacturer's setup is pretty janky, pretty brittle. Try to reinforce the inner portion of this. That'll help suck in the door. Not give you so much of a nasty gap. Yeah, definitely not my not a trophy repair here, but it's ready to go home. So off to wash and get the keys to the customer and get this thing out of here. All right, well, she's all washed up, ready to get it to the customer. I think I solved my problem. Kind of wish I didn't have to do this, but honestly, cosmetically, it's not as ugly as having the gap. But I fixed my problem by putting a foam shim in here and some longer screws. So it still fits flush. And now my gap is gone. Oh, obviously I still have a pretty hefty gap here, but in comparison to what I was dealing with for the last few days on this, I'm extremely happy now that those two body lines are matching up. So nice thin piece of foam I put in between these two panels here. Tried to make it flush with the weather strip, used a longer screw. This one actually I was able to use the same screw, but still secure, still pretty. Not too much of an eyesore, so ship it. This is a picture of the extension panel for the left rear door slider for that Pacifica. This is the damaged one, and it's a pretty large piece, but this picture here, you'll notice in the square section, as I zoom in, you'll see where the red line intersects through the center of that panel. I actually cut that in half to act as a temporary support to hold the door in place due to the fact that the lower roller hinge is much larger, and we needed to have support on the door in order to transport the car and prep everything for paint. This is the rear bracket that has to be installed manually with some nuts and bolts provided. I struggled the most with it, getting that gap lined up. Here's a picture of the front bracket. So the entire system comes in three pieces, front bracket, rear bracket, and then of course the main body. And it requires a lot of adjustment between all three panels to get it to line up. Here's the cosmetic skirt or flare that goes over that extension panel. You'll notice here the typical areas where they get damaged, curb checked, just because of the low ground clearance. Doesn't take much to break them. They're plastic, lots of imperfections in them from the factory, so they're pretty easy to paint, lots of room for error. Pictured here is the bottom of the subfloor in between the front door and the rear door. That was pretty severely damaged and required quite a bit of body work and straightening to get that door to close, to create the best gap that we could in between the front door edge and the rear door edge. It was an undertaking, and it took a lot of guesswork to straighten out that edge, match it up with the other side so that we could get the door to close and gap itself correctly. This is the front hinge that was beat up pretty bad too, that was replaced. Again, it kept the front edge of the door open, and it was preventing the door from closing automatically or manual. So a lot of road noise, and took a lot of effort to get it straight. But once I was finally able to get all the body lines level, was really happy with this, and customer came and picked up the vehicle this morning, was super pleased with it, and so are we. So it was a challenging repair to say the least, but needless to say, it's a done deal. And I couldn't be happier. So thanks for watching.